Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Retirement Compass, the show dedicated to helping you successfully navigate to and through your retirement. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, and I'm joined in the studio by two members from Stonebridge Wealth Systems. We have the co-founder, Tim Kulhanek, and partner, Jeremy Gove. We've got a great show for you today. The title of today's show is Guaranteed Income, a License to Spend. Here's the reality. It can be so challenging to figure out how much of your money you should be spending from your investments each year that you're in retirement. How long are you going to live? What healthcare costs might you have down the road? And the problem is that in the absence of having a guaranteed income plan in place for yourself, folks either do one of two things. They overspend and then run the risk of outliving their money, or they don't spend enough and they don't enjoy the retirement of their dreams. Neither option is ideal for folks, so that's why we're going to talk about it today. And Tim and Jeremy, I'm excited to hear the solutions you have that resulted in a license to spend. How are you this week?
Doing great. Yep.
Good. I know you're thrilled, right, to be here, ready to go?
Yes. We actually are.
Yes.
No, we 100% are.
We're waking up today. It's all good.
We've got Willie Mays Hayes in the movie Major League had a license to steal. We've got a license to spend. And we're gonna dish these licenses out to the audience today.
I love it. I love the creativity on today's show, and we have some statistics we're going to share with you to get this conversation kicked off. This is from a January 2023 report by David Zook from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And this study found that only 11% of private industry employees are participating in a defined benefit pension plan. So those pensions that our parents, our grandparents, many of them had. Well, meanwhile, 49% of private industry employees participate in defined contribution style plans. Maybe it's a 401k, 403b, things of that nature. So here's the issue. Workers are now arriving into retirement with this mix of stocks and bonds without a manual on what to do with that money and how to take that lump sum and turn it into this reliable ongoing stream of income that's going to last them for the rest of their lives. And this is why we know the number one fear of most retirees is running out of money. So we need to focus on how we get to having this license to spend, how we can be okay with being confident we can spend the money and know we're not going to outlive it. So yeah, let's define that. Tim, I'll start with you. What do you mean when you say license to spend?
Yeah, so the concept was, at least for the purposes of today's show, was introduced by a couple authors, David Blanchett and Michael Finke, and they're from the American College for Financial Planning. So one of them's got a PhD, one's a CFA, CHFC. So they're very, very experienced in the field of retirement income planning, and they teach for a living, right, at the American College. And essentially they found in their study was folks either had one of three things. The company pension, that is, you just mentioned, has kind of gone the way of the dinosaur. Right. Or the delayed Social Security till age 70 to try to maximize those benefits, which isn't at the top of everybody's list. I mean, more people are working longer, though I think we both found that more people, not because necessarily they have to, because they want to. You know, I was just talking to a client the other day who I've been trying to get to retire for about 2.5 years now. I'm like, it's time. And I thought, you know, I said, all right, so March 17th, that's the date, right? He goes, well, yeah, you know, it's just scary. I've always worked my whole life. I just think I need to keep working. You don't need to keep working. So there's people like that. Right. But a lot of people watch this show right now. They're like, oh, that's not me. You know,
I want to retire now.
Right. Like my mom, she was a teacher, and as soon as she hit the rule of 85 in the state of Nebraska, I'm ready to go do something different, right? Yep. Maybe not totally retire, but at least stop doing my current role. But you might need supplemental income. So wait until 70 might not be a great option. Or the third option is they transferred the risk of longevity, which Jeremy will talk about in a little bit, that there's probably a rational reason to be concerned about longevity and not knowing how long your money's going to last, but also there's definitely some irrationality involved here as well. They transferred that risk to a third party, in this case, an insurance company through a guaranteed income annuity. And on average, folks that had one of those three options would spend more than double every year in retirement, thereby elevating their level of overall satisfaction throughout their retirement years, their golden years. And so as it turns out, right, what the study found, the conclusion, is that retirees who had products like guaranteed income annuities or a pension didn't necessarily have more wealth, but because they had their wealth located in a specific location, that is in the form of guaranteed income, they actually were able to sustain a more enjoyable, more checking off of the bucket list type of lifestyle for the 10, 20, 30 years, however long you are fortunate enough to be able to spend in retirement.
Right. And I would imagine that's because psychologically, when you know that you've got your income covered and you can be confident that you can spend it and not outlive your money, you're going to be much more likely to spend your money, and surprise, spending it is how you enjoy it, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's one of the things we find all the time. When you have an income that is coming in, it's easier to spend that money, right?
Yeah.
But if I'm using, and that's what the study kind of found, is that when you're spending money out of my retirement account or money that I've saved, that's a little bit harder to spend.
For sure. So there's definitely some psychological stuff at play here.
Absolutely.
We know that behavior and behavioral finance really does come into play, your thoughts and beliefs about money. But it's interesting because I'm curious, did the study also talk about the psychological impact of then how people choose to spend their money?
Yeah, so there was in the study they concluded there's really both of them are actually the reasons. So one is behavioral, one's rational. And so longevity, basically they're just worried, if I'm gonna outlive my money, is that a huge risk for me, right? And so in the survey, they basically gave you two options. They said, okay, if I was going to give you $140,000, and I'll give that to you today, or I'll give you $10,000 a year for the rest of your life, which one would you choose? Now, actuarially, those are the same based on today's interest rates and stuff and life expectancies. So the numbers were really the same, but it was 60% of the respondents chose the $10,000 a year of income because that's just something that we're used to. We've worked, up until now, we've had
that
steady
paycheck. Right. Yep.
So it's a little bit easier to spend money when I know that money's coming in.
Yes.
I'm going to replace what I'm taking out.
Right. Yep. So it's interesting because it's almost like the majority of people were choosing that security and that safety and that certainty over the potential for more growth, right? Because we all know compound interest, if you had a larger lump sum, that could potentially grow to even more, but they wanted to know that, nope, every year I'm going to get this paycheck. And so, it's interesting because a lot of retirees don't have a plan set up like that. They are just having this lump sum and hoping it's going to last them throughout the rest of their lives, right?
Absolutely. And if you look at this, I think we've got a table of the results of this study that we can pull up there. It didn't really matter that much what level of savings somebody had. And in fact, if you look at the bottom of that chart, folks that had the most savings in this study, so 500,000 or more, were actually more likely to choose the guaranteed income source than those that had fewer assets.
Interesting.
So more people are saying, no, I want that guarantee. And this is specifically for what we call like discretionary types of items. So if you're going to spend money on going on vacation, doing the things you really want to do.
The bucket list items,
like all
right?
the things that you'd always plan on doing. And here's what's crazy. You might think, well, people can just put that in a brokerage account and they'll spend the same amount. It's not even close. And in fact, a 2019 study found that only 34% of households were spending, and this is folks aged between 65 and 74, so the demographic we primarily serve, only 34% of households in that age group, were spending more than just the income their assets produce. So let's say, for example, you've got $1 million in a retirement account or investments, let's just say, and it produces a 4% yield for you or interest rate. Only 34% of folks were actually spending more than just the 4% that portfolio kicked off. So there's $40,000. And it's this psychological block because in the same study, they said, the reason, are you not spending down any of the principal because you want to make sure that you leave that money to the next generation? Do you have specific what we call bequests to leave money for your children or charities or anything? No, like less than a third had specific bequests, but because of this psychological, kind of this behavioral finance type of block, this is why one of the battles I think we face as advisors is actually getting people to spend their money.
Yes.
Like this couple I was telling you about, I said, you're never going to spend this money. I'm telling you right now, you're never going to spend the money because we've done a great job planning for Social Security. We've maximized that. It was a situation where, she didn't work outside the house a whole lot. And so what ended up happening is she filed for Social Security early, and I told her, you go ahead and take it earlier because yours you can delay. His is always going to be higher. He's older than you by 5-6 years, so eventually, most likely, you'll step into his benefit. So he filed at 69 in a few months. We actually had him backdate the application to get a lump sum to help with some remodel work that they want to do in their
nice.
basement.
Yeah.
So he got a check, let's say like $30,000. Plus, she got a letter from Social Security that said, hey, you know, you're getting that $518 per month. Well, guess what? In addition to that, we're going to start sending you another $1,100 as a spousal boost.
Wow.
So you're going to get $1,600 a month.
Right.
Well, they've got that guaranteed income. So if you do this right, it's actually a challenge to spend your money, which is why we're having this conversation, because a classic study called The Annuity Puzzle, published back in 2011, found that while running out of money was the #1 concern amongst retirees, just 12% of U.S. households actually chose to transfer their risk to a third party. So if you're out there listening to this and watching the show today and you're thinking, wow, you know what, I'd like to be able to have double the income in retirement than what I would have if I just keep going the way I'm going, that would absolutely be a reason why you'd at least want to give that number a call and just see where you're at. You can't get a second opinion from the person that gave you the first. It starts with a phone call to that number.
Wonderful. Tim, Jeremy, thank you so much. I can't wait to hear what else you have to say regarding this concept of giving you all a license to spend. But if this is resonating with you and you would like to receive your very own complimentary written financial review, all you need to do is call 866-256-7778. Or if you'd rather connect online, you can simply click that QR code and that will get you connected as well. We'll be back with more right after this.
You know, if you think about the average American consumer, we don't talk about financial topics very often. And so we spend a lot of time at Stonebridge doing educational seminars and different things that are free of charge. If you're not educated in a topic, how do you make educated decisions? When you're working with a client, you're sitting down with them, they're a little stressed out, but after you go through the process and you really take time to educate them on not only what we're doing for them, but why we're doing it, that really gives them peace of mind, and you can see the weight just kind of drops. And when they leave, I hear all the time,
I really should have done this years ago. But sometimes there's a fear that somebody might try to sell us something. If the things that I can provide, if you don't want, don't need, or can't use those, I've got some good news for you. We're not going to sell them to you. We are fulfilling our fiduciary duty of putting their interests ahead of our own.
Did you know your retirement savings isn't entirely yours? That's right. Your traditional 401k, IRA, or pension is actually shared with the IRS. And when it's time to withdraw, they'll be waiting for their cut in taxes. To find out how much you could owe, try our easy-to-use tax calculator. Just scan the QR code or visit stonebridgetaxbill.com.
Welcome back to the Retirement Compass. I'm Kristen Oakley here with both Tim and Jeremy from Stonebridge Wealth Systems. And today we are giving all of you a new license, what we are calling a license to spend. We know that the #1 fear of most retirees is running out of money, but as we already talked about in the first segment, it can be really challenging for people who've even done a great job of saving to make that switch and start spending their money and enjoying it throughout their retirement. Really, that confidence comes when you have a solid plan in place. And I know we're going to get to more of the solutions and specifically how you help folks do that. But it was interesting because we were talking about this study earlier in the show, and only 1 in 5 people have actually taken action to ensure, and we mean that quite literally, that they don't run out of money before they run out of life. But those who have taken that step spend as much as double each year in retirement, which really provides them the opportunity to have a much more enriching golden years, right? I mean, that's really what we're talking about here.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so keep in mind that in that study, that they were giving them several different options. One is delaying Social Security to maximize it. And for those of you that don't know, if you delay to age 70, that's going to maximize your Social Security benefits.
Right.
Unless you didn't contribute, and that could be an issue. But as a spousal benefit, you wouldn't want to delay past 67, just to kind of throw that out there. But if the other option, so option number 1 was delay Social Security. Number 2 is to find work with an employer that offered, some sort of defined benefit plan. And again, you mentioned at the start of the show, Kristen, only 11% of employers are actually offer something like that, right? So that's really not an option today.
For so many,
for most people. And so then the last thing is to transfer that risk to an insurance company in the form of an annuity. And there's so many people that talk about annuities, and they talk about them as if they're horrible, but used correctly, a lot of times that can provide that guaranteed income that people are looking for.
Yeah, well, let's drill down on that a little bit more, because I think that so many people think of annuities as the A word, right? I mean, a lot of people have been conditioned to think that these are the worst thing ever. We hear people like Susie Orman, Dave Ramsey, a lot of times there's a lot of negative talk surrounding annuity products, but we all at this desk know that not all annuities are created equal. There's different kinds, there are different types, and it's important not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, as the saying goes. So, you guys, of course, have a very successful financial practice. You've helped thousands of people retire successfully, and you do use certain types of annuity when it's the right situation, the right tool to accomplish something within certain people's, retirement portfolio. So where's the disconnect? Why is it that annuities are getting so bashed in the media often, and yet here we are talking about this, and you're saying this is the key to giving people that guaranteed income?
Yeah, my favorite part about this study is at the end, it kind of talks about that. And it actually says that advisors who are discouraging their clients from purchasing annuity are potentially not only subject to a conflict of interest because they want to keep the money in the brokerage account where they can charge you a fee on all of those dollars, but two, are actually doing their clients a disservice because they're sacrificing the retirement security and satisfaction that those folks otherwise could have been experiencing by having double the income every year in retirement. Now, the reason, to answer your question, that I think that a lot of the gurus, so to speak, so you talked about Dave Ramsey and Susie Orman, another one I'd throw out there is Ken Fisher, who they're always, on TV and why I hate annuities on the internet and all this stuff. The thing of it is, if you're a guru, so to speak, and you've got a nationally syndicated broadcast, which we're not there yet. We're working on it. You're going to get us there.
Yeah, you're going to get us there, Kristen.
So then I'll have to reframe this maybe. But essentially, if you're trying to speak to this broad of audience as possible to try to gain followers, you have to go an inch deep, a mile wide, right? Because you got to give general advice.
Very generic, yes.
And that's why we call, like Dave's great. Dave's superpower is getting people out of debt and from a basically poverty standard into raising themselves into like the middle class, and where now they can afford to do some things, be more generous, have a comfortable lifestyle.
Yes.
But there's something called the Ramsey Circle of Poverty, where essentially if you continue to follow his advice later in life and you start spending 8% of your portfolio per year, Wade Pfau, also a professor at the American College, did a study to find out if you use that advice, you stay all 100% in equities throughout your entire life, and you start withdrawing 8% per year starting in retirement, 2/3 of the time, 66% of the time, you're going to run out of money before you run out of life. Well, that doesn't work.
No.
So where does that leave us? Where it leaves us with, we have to be willing to use all of the tools available in our repertoire in order to accomplish the goal. I don't really care, quite frankly, what the name of the tool is. If it gets the job done, I remember when I was in, probably a freshman or sophomore year of high school, and I was in shop class, I had no idea what channel locks were. But then I realized that's a pretty cool tool, and all of a sudden this thing comes way apart, and you can do a lot of different things, accomplish specific goals and objectives with the right tool. And annuity's no different. Does that make sense?
Yep, it's just one of the many tools that are available. And again, it's no one size fits all. That's the other thing that really sets you all apart, is you're not giving generic advice. When you come in and meet with the team of Stonebridge Wealth Systems, you're going to be able to receive detailed, personalized advice that's customized to you and your individual situation. That's a game changer. Absolutely is. And so like the analogy I sometimes like to use, I don't know about this one I put together, but let's go back to 2014. Okay? And it's the Super Bowl. And while the now love of his life was just entering her final year of middle school, Patriots head coach Bill Belichick wanted to prove to the world how dominant his New England Patriots defense truly was. So for the entire game, during that Super Bowl against the Seattle Seahawks, he only played 10 players on defense the entire game, just to show they could win with not having every asset on the field. You guys remember that? You don't?
For some reason, I don't remember that.
Are you aware of the situation with Bill Belichick and his youthful friend?
You had to inform me of that before today's show. I was not aware. Yeah.
He's now the coach at University of North Carolina, and I think she's a student. But anyways, I made that up. Not the part about Bill, but about playing 10 players. It never happened. Why? Because no matter how dominant your team is, and the Patriots had some dominant teams back then, you always put all of your best players on the field at all times to get the job done. It's no different when it comes to your financial plan, folks. If you want to make sure that you're accomplishing your goals as effectively, efficiently as possible and solving those three key questions that folks have when they come in: when can I retire? Will my money last as long as I need it to? And will my family be okay if something happens to me? Those are the solutions that we've built into the Retirement Compass process, that when you call the number at the bottom of your screen, you're going to get a complimentary opportunity to walk through that with one of our team of experienced advisors, and you'll know exactly where you stand so you can make an educated decision on what repertoire of products, if you will, or mix of products is truly going to be the best to get you to and through the retirement of your dreams.
Awesome explanation. I always love your analogies. I never know what's going to come, and somehow it
Sometimes
ties
I don't
together.
either.
It's great. Tim, Jeremy, thank you so much. To our viewers at home, the reality is the best way for you to find out if you're on track to reach your goals and what tools might be right for you that you may not currently even be aware of or using is by coming in and receiving your complimentary written financial review. To claim yours, simply call 866-256-7778, or again, you're welcome to scan that QR code and that will get you connected as well. Stay with us. We're going to continue this conversation on how you can have a guaranteed license to spend in your retirement right after this.
Our team is very unique, so we all have different gifts. You know, when you put it all together, it fits well.
Jeremy is definitely our most seasoned and fastest growing advisor we have. He's discerning, so he understands the way we want to do things at Stonebridge, to focus on the client and solving their problems, and that's really what he's passionate about.
I know Tim spends a lot of time making sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed for his clients. And he's not just satisfied knowing the 30,000 foot view, he wants to get down in the weeds and know exactly how it works.
The things that you buy, the stocks, the bonds, the mutual funds, that really isn't that important to the client. What's important to the client is, what does this mean for me? And at the end of the day, what it means is they can sit back and listen to the music. You know that you've got a team, not just one person, but an entire team behind you that's taking care of those things, so you can focus on what's important. Have you ever considered refinancing your retirement? When interest rates are low, you might be able to refinance your home, your car, and even your credit card rates, because it could help keep more of your money each month. Yet when interest rates go up, it may make sense to refinance your retirement. Higher interest rates could provide income opportunities that you may not be aware of. What works for your portfolio during low interest rates may not work for you when interest rates are high. Find out if a retirement refi could work better for you. Give us a call today and schedule a complimentary Refi Your Retirement review.
Welcome back to the Retirement Compass, where today Tim, Jeremy, and I are discussing this concept of having a license to spend in retirement. How can you be confident that you can go ahead and spend your hard-earned money and enjoy the retirement you've always wanted, and be confident that you won't outlive your money? I mean, there's so much that we could talk about. I feel like time has flown by on today's show.
Always does.
Right? But what else would you like our viewers to understand about what it means for them to have a license to spend?
Yeah, I'm just going to hit some high-level, quick-hitter data points. Go back to the study, folks, and you can find this online. It's Guaranteed Income, a License to Spend. You can find the PDF from Finke and Blanchett. But the study found that today's retirees are only spending roughly 75% of what they could be spending from available assets. In other words, if I could be living on $100,000 a year, retirees are instead choosing to live on just $75,000 for fear of running out of money. The reality is the fear is often unfounded, yet the choices remain the same. We also found in the study that households with the lowest allocation to guaranteed income across income groups, in other words, whether you are a low, middle, or high income earner, spend the least, okay? So the folks that have the lowest allocation to guaranteed income sources spend the least throughout retirement, which you could then equate to the lowest level of satisfaction overall in retirement. So that's, I think, the biggest takeaway that I can give folks. Yeah,
so here's what's really interesting about that. It seems like it doesn't matter if somebody has $500,000 saved up for retirement or $5 million saved up for retirement. Their spending will still decrease as a percentage of their overall income as what they have guaranteed income decreases, right?
Exactly.
It's like they want that confidence of knowing that paycheck's going to be there for them every single month.
Right, exactly. And that's exactly what we're saying. So the question really becomes, what are we leaving on the table? What could we be spending, or what are we giving up, right?
The opportunity cost.
The opportunity cost, exactly, that's right. And so if you had $1 million, and as Tim was talking about, if we were going to spend 4% of that, that'd be $40,000 a year, right? And most people, like we've talked about in the study, they could do that comfortably according to a lot of studies,
right?
But they won't spend $40,000. But so according to Annuity Rate Watch, today a 65-year-old couple could have a lifetime payout on that same $1 million of $72,000 a year. Now that's a lifetime payout, so that's guaranteed for the rest of their life. Do you think they're going to spend most of that $72,000? I would think they would, right?
If they know it's guaranteed and it's coming, then they have the confidence to do that, right?
Exactly right. And so that's what we're talking about here. And so it can be a real game changer for a lot of people, especially in their retirement years. As you get older and older, obviously we don't want to go back to work, and having that guaranteed income is critical.
Yeah. And as you were saying those numbers, I just want to say that I personally would never be opposed to having an 80% bump in pay. I'm sure you guys wouldn't. I'm sure our cameramen back there, they wouldn't either, right? So, I mean, that's right.
You're into it.
But that's the thing. I mean, sign me up for that. So I'm curious, as we wrap up today's show, any recent stories come to mind of folks that you've been able to walk through this process with? If we polled our audience, it'd be awesome if we could do this in real time, right? How many of them would be opposed if they could trade in their defined benefit plan, or if they had the option to, okay, I'm a new hire, do I get a pension plan, defined benefit plan, or both? How many would say, oh, I don't want a defined benefit plan. I don't want that guaranteed income that has to be paid out by my employer because I heard annuities are bad. Probably none of them, right? They love pensions, So a company recently, Kawasaki, they terminated their pension. And they said, hey, you've got a few different options. You can take a lump sum and we'll pay it to you and you'll pay tax. You can roll it to an IRA. Or you can leave it in here and we're going to send you an annuity later on. I had several clients come in that work at Kawasaki. End of the day, here's what matters, folks. If you think pensions are good, because I tend to think so as well, and the data, the mathematics backs that up. Academics love pensions for that reason. We were able to do a few things for these folks at Kawasaki. Give them more income from an annuity than what their pension would, and provide a death benefit for their family if something would happen to them. If those things would be important to you, and you think maybe I should keep an open mind, that's a reason to call that number today. For sure. Tim, Jeremy, thank you so much. I'm excited for more folks to have a license to spend as a result of them connecting with you and the team of Stonebridge Wealth Systems. Again, you don't have to go it alone. Simply reach out by calling 866-256-7778 or scanning that QR code in the bottom right-hand corner. Thanks so much for being here. We look forward to being back with you next time on the Retirement Compass.